Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rob Shemuel, with you today for this week's 10-minute Torah. So I just want to commend everybody. I want to compliment everybody and thank people. This Saturday, we had quite the minyan. We had more people than we need for a minyan. We didn't have more people than we need. I'm never going to say that, but we asked everybody. We know that it's very comfortable and people are getting used to being on Zoom, to being part of their house, just rolling out of bed and whatever. But you know what? You folks showed up for services. Thank you so much. You made a minyan. You engaged in that mitzvah, and we really appreciate that. So thank you very much. And once again, I want to reiterate, I'm here to serve you as your rabbi. So if you like the service, great. If there are things you'd like to see done differently, and we can do it, per the halacha, I'm always interested in hearing your ideas. One of the things I like to do is mix up or rotate the various prayers and psalms that we do. We don't do everything in the book. If to do that, yeah, I would either be going very fast and you might get lost, or we'd extend the time of the service. And Friday night, an hour and 15 minutes. Saturday morning, 2 hours and a half. You start at 10. We want to be done by about 12:30. We figure that's probably a good time for it. So in order to keep it to that time, we do only certain psalms, certain prayers. So I like to rotate it, have a little variety, keep it interesting. But if there are things you like more of, things you like less of, and we can, it's part of the minchag, the custom of doing the service. I'm happy to accommodate you. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about this week's Torah portion, Hukat. Now, Hukat is a decree. It is something somebody tells you to do. It is a law. You try to figure out a logical reason why we're doing it, and you can't because sometimes there just isn't any. But you do it anyway because the person or the being, in this case with a capital B, that gave you the decree knows a whole lot more than we can ever hope to know. So we just go ahead and do it. One example of decree is the laws of kashrut. Why do we Jews only eat specific things in specific combinations? Why is certain animal meat available to us and other animal meat like pork or seafood like lobsters and shrimp are not available to us? Why? Because God says these are not holy foods. Okay, what makes them holy? Who knows, right? We can speculate, we can talk about it. Some people have devised maybe health reasons for it. But the bottom line is because God said, this is what you will eat and this is what you won't eat. And you will not cook a kid in its mother's milk. Okay. This week, we get another example of a hukat, a decree that seemingly, why are we doing this? And it's the para aduma. It's the red heifer, the red cow. This is a cow that is completely red. Yes, it can have one, maybe two hairs that are not red. More than that, and it's disqualified. It is a young cow, which the sages interpreted to be about a year old. It has never had a yoke. It has never done work in the field. So it's pure. And the red heifer is, of course, ritually slaughtered, and the animal is completely burnt. And the ashes of the red cow are used to purify someone who has been contaminated by a corpse. So they mix it in water, there's a ceremony, they sprinkle it on the person, and after 7 days, that person is pure. They do it on the third day, and on the seventh day, that they're outside the camp getting purified, and then on the seventh day, they can come back and they can rejoin the congregation. Interestingly enough, the person that does the sprinkling, who has purified the person who needs the sprinkling, becomes contaminated himself. And they have to purify themselves, and they are contaminated until the evening. So it's an interesting situation that the sages are saying, wow, so somebody purifies somebody, and it's almost like they're taking on their contamination. And people say, well, is there any precedent of that? And in a way it is, okay? When you look at Abraham, Abraham was descended from pagans, right? Isaac and Rebekah gave birth to Isaac. I'm sorry. Abraham and Sarah gave birth to Isaac and Ishmael. And of course, Isaac was the pure one. Isaac and Rebekah gave birth to Esau, who was the father of the Romans, a very big pagans, and also Jacob, who became Israel, who was our progenitor of the children. We are the children of Israel. Jacob became Israel. That was one of his names, and he gave birth to the 12 sons who would become the progenitors of the 12 tribes, etc. So we see that there's purity within impurity as well. So that's kind of how the sages look at the idea of taking something and, of something that's purifying something from something that's not pure. Okay. The other big thing there's a couple of other big things that happen in this particular portion. One of the things is that the people contend with Moshe. Now, this is a different situation than previous contention. Okay, this is the generation 38 years later, after the wandering in the desert. These are the people that are going to go out and conquer the promised land. And they're complaining, gosh, we've been eating bread and water for the last 38 years, and we're getting a little tired of it. Not only that, but Miriam dies. Now, Miriam was a prophetess. She was the older daughter of the older sister of Moses and Aaron. And it is because of her merit that there was a well every 3 days that the children of Israel could access water. So here we have Miriam dying. And when she dies, the water dries up. Now, interestingly enough, her name was Miriam. The Hebrew word for water is mayim. See the connection? And now the people are complaining. How are we going to get water? Where is, what about the bread? We're tired of the bread. And Moses has had enough. Moses was a great man. He was a prophet, but he's dealing with 2.5 million people that are complaining for 38 years. God says, speak to that rock and water will burst forth. Moses takes his cane, his stick, his staff, and he hits the rock once. A little trickle of water comes out. Then he takes his staff and he smashes the rock, and there is a torrent of water that comes out of the rock. God says to Moses, I told you to speak to the rock. You beat the rock. You did not sanctify my name. You will not enter the promised land. Now, you may remember earlier in the year when we were in the portion where Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's two older sons that were supposed to succeed him as the high priests, went into the Holy of Holies at a time when they shouldn't have, with incense that was not the mixture that God deemed for going into the Holy of Holies. And as a result, they lost their lives. And in a flash of lightning, the bodies were intact, but the souls were gone. And Moses said they were killed because they did not sanctify God's name. Again, here we are 39 years later, 38 years later. God says to Moses, you didn't sanctify my name. I told you to tell the people that I said, speak to the rock. Instead, you beat it. You did not sanctify my name. You will not go in. Now, the sages kind of question, why exactly was Moses not allowed to go into the promised land? Some people say, well, because when he was exiled from Egypt, he killed an Egyptian taskmaster that was beating an Israelite, and he was afraid for his life because that would have been the death penalty. And he left. And when he came to the area of Jethro, to the household of Jethro, they said, oh, we've got an Egyptian here. And he didn't correct him. He didn't say, well, I'm actually a Hebrew. He let him believe that he was an Egyptian. And some people say that's why he didn't get to go into the promised land. Either way, this was something that he did. He did it the wrong way. Maybe things got to him. But because he was such a great man, he was held to a higher standard. And unfortunately, this prevented him from going into the promised land. So the other part of another part of the portion, we lost Miriam, and now we're going to lose Aaron. And God says to Moses, take Aaron up to this cave, have Eleazar, his son, accompany him, have Aaron undress his priestly vestments, give them to Eleazar or Eleazar, which basically is making Eleazar the high priest now. And Aaron will lay down, and I will take his soul. Now, when great people die, now when we die, it's a very scary, very traumatic experience. You know, you're losing your consciousness, you're losing your life. But when sages die, it's likened to pulling a hair out of a cup of milk, because these are people that see beyond the physical realm. They live physically in the spiritual realm, if that makes sense. And that's something we can discuss further some other time. So to them, death is just no big deal. I'm going to be with God forever, or whatever, world to come, however you want to think about it. So while it's very traumatic for the rest of us, Aaron just lay down and that was it. No big deal. Anyway, I'll leave you with that sort of comfort. Shabbat Shalom a little early. We will see you hopefully Tuesday night or tonight as this comes out on Tuesday. Shabbat Shalom, and look forward to seeing you again in services.